Pardon the mess. Uh, Thanks again to my friend Gary, where I got the Double Dragon cabs from. I also bought a Vision Pro monitor from him, which is there. I also took parts out of another Double Dragon cab that was in really bad shape. So I've got coin box, some of the internals there, um, and another complete monitor. So I am working on swapping the Vision Pro into the monitor mount for the Double Dragon. So, if you remember, maybe you remember last video, I can barely remember. This one, I can't get the K7000A monitor working. So, this is from another Double Dragon, and it is a K7000, which is right here, chassis. So, again, I think I might have mentioned this in the other video. Wells Gardner makes the K7000 chassis. They come in varieties for 19-inch monitors and 25-inch monitors. This is 19-inch K7000 chassis. The monitor that's in that Double Dragon is a Zenith K7000A. It's typically called. And you can tell the difference because the K7000, has one red lead to the anode cup. The K7000A has two. And the chassis are laid out a little bit different. Just a little bit. So, we'll talk about the Vision Pro first. Why Vision Pro is good for a couple reasons. Not number one reason, but one reason, they have a remote board. And on the remote board, there are various adjustments that on a K7000 monitor are on potentiometers on the back of the PCB. So to adjust the picture on this monitor, if you're using your cabinet to play different games from different years and different manufacturers, you might have to make it taller vertically or horizontally, or moved it left or right. And those adjustments require you to take the glass off and access the back of the monitor so you can adjust the potentiometers here. And the width coil, to adjust the width, you put a plastic tool down in there, and you basically rotate it, and it moves a ferrite, I believe it's a ferrite core, up and down, and that makes the horizontal width wider or shorter. But the Vision Pro monitor, it's got those adjustments on a remote board. So, have this remote board accessible through the coin door, and you can just hold this remote board in your hand from the front of the cabinet while looking at the monitor, making your adjustments. You don't have to take the glass off to get to the back of the monitor or anything like that. So that's a huge quality of life improvement. This monitor from the K7000 that was originally in these Double Dragons, or at least most of them, I believe. The other thing is that this is a tri-res monitor. It just does CGA, EGA, and VGA. So I have a couple Sega Naomis, and they also are capable of running in CGA, standard res, or VGA. And games look really nice in VGA. I've run them before in a cab I had with a VGA monitor, and the games look, I think, a lot better. So yes, the plan is to swap this into the cabinet so I have a little bit more flexibility with screen adjustments. I can play Naomi games in VGA res. It's a newer monitor. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't really know. Vision Pros, I think, were made by about 3 different manufacturers, and then Hap bought them from those manufacturers and slapped the Vision Pro label on them. I haven't looked to see which of the few manufacturers actually made the chassis on this one. But I believe that flybacks, and I know cap kits are available. So, and when they're working, they have really nice pictures. So, yes, this was part of my plan, was to swap one of these monitors into this cabinet. So the reason I'm making this video right now is because, well, apart from the mess, here you can see the frame from the monitor that came out of a Double Dragon. Up against the cab there, you can see that wooden board. That's the wooden board that this frame mounts to from the back. And the tube obviously goes in here. 4 corners bolted in. And then these bolts go through tabs on all 4 corners and secures it to the wood, and the chassis goes in there, which again, that's made right there for a K7000 or K7000A. Right, the PCB fits right in the slots, and the risers, the 2 risers on the end, the bolts hold the chassis down. So Vision Pro has a different chassis, obviously, so that's going to take some modifications to get it to go into there. But this plate is just held on by 4 screws, 2 on each side. So I will be taking that plate off, and then I will take the chassis from the Vision Pro and mark where to drill holes to mount it. It's going to be a tight fit. If you can see on the Vision Pro here, these little plastic tabs here where that screws to the Vision Pro monitor frame, right? And there's a whole plastic tray that the PCB sits on. So I measured about 11 inches from the end of the plastic tab over here to the end of the plastic tab on the other side. And this is something like 11 and a half or so. So it's just barely going to fit in there. I'm going to have to take the plastic spacers out, and I'm going to have to drill holes for where the screws go in, which I think there are 4. I think there's 2 on each side. I haven't taken this apart yet. Obviously, this monitor is still together. But this one I wanted to show because, again, documenting some things about Double Dragon. This frame is one of them because they don't use a standard monitor frame. This is specifically made for the cabinet. So this is all one piece. I had never taken one of these apart. This is the first time, so I was kind of surprised once I looked at it that there's bolts here, there's bolts down here, but this whole thing, all I had to do to get it to this stage was first discharged the tube. Sorry. There was no charge in it, but I did it anyway, just to be safe. Always do that. So the tube was discharged. So I took the anode wire off. I took the neck board off the back of the tube. I unplugged that black pair of wires. That goes to the degauss wires that go around the monitor, so it degausses the monitor when you turn the monitor on. And the yoke wires. There's horizontal and vertical yoke wires that go to the chassis. And then there's the ground wire there that goes to the neck board that's attached to that metal band that's about the same path as the degauss black wires are. And that is a ground wire that's grounding to the Aquadag, the black coating that's on the back of the monitor. So Aquadag, ground, degauss, and yoke wires, and then take the neck board off. And that means that the tube was separated from the chassis. So then all I did was take out the 4 bolts holding the tube to this frame, and I was able to just pull the tube out and put it over there. So then I had the chassis still mounted there, and that's just a standard chassis mount where there was those two bolts, take them off, and then it's kind of tucked into this little plastic holder, so you just pull it back and out, and that got the chassis out. So really simple to take this apart, which was cool because looking at it, never having seen one apart, I didn't know how many bolts I was going to have to take off to get this assembly apart. Right? If I had to take this and the one on the bottom and pull the side panels off, or what I would have to do. So I was really happy when I just undid, again, the bolts that hold it to the wood, go through these holes that are in the tabs on all four sides, and then that let the wood come off. And then make sure you take your chassis and get all the wires that are attached to the tube loose. Remove the 4 screws in the corners. You can pull the tube out, then you can pull the chassis out. So making this video at this point just to show that unique monitor frame for the double dragon cabinets compared to a more typical monitor frame that's kind of a shelf mount style. You can put it on a flat shelf if it's horizontal, or you can use the tabs on the side if you want to mount it vertical in a cab, but that's a more typical mounting frame. This is a horizontal frame, and there's also vertical frames where these side panels run on the vertical orientation instead of the horizontal. So yeah, just documented it while I've got all this stuff pulled apart. It would have been better if I had actually taken the glass in the front off of the monitor, dropped that monitor down so you can see that one that's put together in its wooden frame, but I think you get the idea. It's basically just that wooden frame bolted to this metal frame, and then the tube with 4 bolts mounts to this frame, and the chassis mounts to the bottom. So now what I'm going to do next step is do the same thing on this monitor, starting with discharging the monitor, right? So again, this one's been off for weeks, if not, well, more than a month, I know, since I saw this one on. But I've got my discharge tool out over here, it's over there, big long screwdriver with a ground clip on it. Clip the ground clip to the frame, poke the end of the screwdriver underneath until you can feel the metal connector of the anode cup, and there shouldn't be a spark because it's been sitting there for so long, but you never know. And once you touch that metal, then you can lift up the rubber from the cap, and then I like to touch it again because I can't see it when I'm first in there. So once I lift up the rubber, I can see and definitely hit the metal, just in case I thought I was hitting the metal tab, but I wasn't quite hitting it. And then take the anode off, and then this one, I had a Vision Pro at one time when I had a multi-Williams cab, running a J-Rock multi-Williams board. So I have used one before, but that was a few years ago, and it's a shelf mount cabinet, the Williams cabinets. It was a joust cabinet. So it just pretty much dropped in. So I haven't taken the chassis out from a Vision Pro. So I'm not sure what else connected, but it should be pretty similar. With the anode connected, there should be a degauss connected. Here you can see the degauss wire that goes around the tube. So there should be a degauss connector. The anode, there should also be the same a ground wire that probably goes to the neck board that might be coming off this, and then yoke wires should be from the yoke to the chassis and then the neck board. So I'll discharge that, I'll take those all off so the tube is free. I'll be pulling the tube out moving it over, putting the tube in, bolting the tube in, and at that point, I'll take this off. I'm going to leave it in for now just for stability to keep this thing kind of squared up, because, I mean, if, you know, here I am wiggling it back and forth and it kind of has some wiggle to it, so I want to keep this structure as square as possible as I'm bolting the new tube in. But once it's bolted in, then I'll take that plate off. I will take the plate off, the chassis off of the plate from the Vision Pro frame, and actually I haven't looked to see. Yes, the Vision Pro has screws, so you can take its metal plate off. So I'll have this metal plate off, that metal plate off, and I'll be able to figure out where I'm going to drill my holes. Actually, I probably don't even have to take that metal plate off, because it just mounts with these ears, so I should be able to just put that on top of this plate and mark where I need to drill holes for the screws. So that shouldn't be too hard, but it's going to take some work because I'm going to have to be drilling things, whereas the first part is just getting this tube swapped over, and that should be fairly easy. And actually, I think once I have the tube swapped over, I think I'll also put it back on the piece of wood. Just kind of thinking as I'm doing this. Obviously I'm in the middle of it, so I haven't made the plan for how I'm going to do the whole process, just kind of seeing how things go as I work on it. But I might mount it to the wood once the tube is on the frame, just because it's such a freaking mess in here, and it'd be nice to get that piece of wood combined with this, which makes it easier to move, because it's got handles on that piece of wood. It's really easy once the thing is all bolted together. You just grab the handle and pick it up with one hand and move it around, whereas obviously this one, more traditional monitor frames, they have handles that you can use to lift them and move them around, but this thing doesn't have any handles for that, so you'll be lifting it up by the, you know, sharp metal bits everywhere. It's just sharp metal, as opposed to a monitor frame where they kind of round the metal in, so you're not quite having the weight of a monitor pressing the metal into your fingers, possibly slicing your fingers a little bit. So yeah, I'm excited to get this going, excited to be able to actually play games on this cabinet for the first time. So that's kind of part one of this video. Part two was just a couple more facts about Double Dragon that I didn't really know in my last videos. And that is, one thing was the connectors. Now, of course, I've got that tube right in front of the coin door where I've got the spare connectors. But one of my other videos, I talked about the odd connectors that they used on these cabinets, and then how a lot of people converted them to standard Molex like this, whereas they had plastic connectors that had tabs on the side that you push in and then pull them apart. And they're different pins than these Molex pins too, even though they look similar. And I said that they're unique and odd. Well, I was on Arcade Shop, which is a place that's been selling arcade parts for years and years. And they actually have those listed as Atari trackball connectors. And they sell the 10-pin connector as an Atari trackball connector, which I've never owned a Centipede or any Atari trackball game. So that was news to me, but they are brand new parts that they're selling, so it looks like those, what I thought were oddball back in the day connectors that you might not be able to find, evidently you can still find those, because Arcade Shop at least has the 10-pin variety for sale, which means somebody must be still making them. I don't know what they're called or what company, but if you want to keep your connectors original, on a Double Dragon and not convert to the easier to find standard, what I call standard, more commonly used Molex type connectors, then it looks like you can probably still get those ones that they used. So the other thing, the last thing, is I went to get some new T-molding. You can see this is the original T-molding, and just from 20, 30 years, whatever, it's shrunk and it's peeling away in the corners. It looks like they didn't radius the T-molding either. They didn't cut. Normally when I put T-molding on a cab, if it's going around a corner like this, you just make a couple little slits that makes it bend easier, but still has the part that goes into the slot in the wood. So they didn't do that, which I don't know if that's part of why it did this. I think just through age and shrinking, it would probably have done that anyway. Same thing around the corners. When I put T-molding on a cabinet around a corner, I cut small little triangles, a couple of them, 2 or 3 of them out, so that it goes around the corner easier than if you just try to bend it and hammer it in without those relief cuts. I'm not sure if that's what they did here or not, but anyway, I went to get T-molding, and I'm so used to Atari cabinets, Tempests. I've had several Tempests and Asteroids Deluxe, etc. That I was just about to order 3/4 inch T-molding and be done with it, and I remembered a post from someone who on Clav who was talking about Double Dragon cabs and mentioned that they use thinner wood so they're lighter. And I thought, at the time I read it, and I'm just like, what? I don't think that's right. Well, it is right. Remembering that post, I thought, well, I better double check before I order something. And sure enough, this is 5/8 inch wide. This is not 3/4 inch. So what jogged my memory about that post was I saw somebody who has a Double Dragon converted to a like 3001 whatever game board for sale, and he had new T-molding on it, and I could see up at the top of the cab in his picture, it was really obvious that the T-molding hung out past the edge of the cabinet art. There was a shadow, and I zoomed in, and sure enough, the T-molding was overhanging the edge, and I'm like, oh, that reminds me of that post that said that they use thinner wood. So sure enough, I went and I measured my cab here, and it's 5/8. It's not 3/4 of an inch. So luckily, I didn't order my T-molding. Not that T-molding's all that expensive, but yeah. So that's one more thing about the Double Dragon cabs, is that is 5/8. The control panel is 3/4 of an inch. So I had the control panel I made. I had a spare piece of several spare pieces of a foot or two or so of black 3/4 inch T-molding. So I put that on the control panel. But yeah, holding it up to here, it's like, oh yeah, sure enough, that would overhang on both ends. That would not be good. So I've ordered, actually I went with red. I'm not keeping this 100% stock Double Dragon, so I just figure with the less common red side art on the cab, the red logo there, that red T-molding would really kind of look good. And although this series is called Double Dragon, this one has always had a Kadash marquee on it. I did get from the cab that I got the other parts from, I do now have a Double Dragon marquee, which I had the 2 cabs, and one of them had the Double Dragon marquee. That's the one I sold. And this one had Kadash, but I really kind of like Kadash. It kind of goes with the whole colors on the side of the cab. So I'm thinking of just leaving it Kadash, so it won't really be a Double Dragon really at all anymore at that point, because I think I'm going to also replace the artwork here. This artwork, when you flip it, I think I might have showed, when you flip it, it's got a design that kind of matches. It's got the V shape here, but it's not in these colors, the red and yellow colors. It's the black and gray of the more common side art variety, so it doesn't really quite match with this. And also, it's made in like a horizontal orientation. So if you put your monitor vertically, then the flip side of this bezel, it doesn't look right because it's horizontal kind of oriented with the arrow like pointing up and down, but your monitors and the artwork is like this, so it's kind of pointing off to whichever side you want it to point to. So I think I'm just going to get poster board, use this as a pattern, and just make a black bezel. I'm a little worried that's too much black. Right, I went ahead and put the black molding on my optional control panel here. And I got some black vinyl that somebody on Clav had recommended to cover the wood here. I think using red would have been too much, too bright, too garish, I don't know, whatever you want to say, even though it would have matched the sides and the T-molding. I would have loved to get something with like a generic design that had black and reds, but whatever. This is, whatever. It is what it is. But yeah, I don't know what other artwork I could make or have printed that would look good horizontally and vertically, other than base it on the design that's on the reverse of this, that again kind of echoes this arrow theme, and maybe on one side have it so it fits with horizontal, and the other side so it fits with vertical, so the arrow's pointing down. But that means somebody has to design it, because I'm not good at that, and then I have to pay to get it printed and all that stuff. Whereas if I just kind of use this and make a black poster board thing, then it's just kind of in there, and you won't really notice it, although it will be a lot of black. Basically, the whole front of the cabinet will be black. Oh, and also, these control panels have Double Dragon artwork on them, so yeah, I forgot about that, because I'm not getting rid of those control panels. Definitely one of them, if not two of them, will be for this. This was kind of like a vertical panel, a Japanese stick, for vertical shmups, and this obviously for Arkanoid, using these two buttons. But for horizontal games, 2 joysticks, 3 buttons each, those panels are fine. I have one with leaf switch, one with micro switch joysticks, so I haven't decided what exactly I'm going to use for the cab. And I kind of thought for Neo Geo games, maybe I should make another one from scratch that has 4 buttons per player, although then you're starting to get into a room issue where if you've got 2 players, 4 buttons each in a 19-inch cabinet. Another friend of mine said, yeah, be careful, because you don't want to be so far over when you're playing that you're looking kind of at the side of the monitor. It's better to have them more towards the center, so you're kind of looking at the middle of the monitor, which is true. I agree with that. So that kind of brings into question, how many buttons for each player can you have? Again, this came from my old War Final Assault cabinet that was turning into a multi-JAMA. It had already been converted to something else when I got it. So this is basically 2 halves of that old control panel cut down the middle, 3 inches removed, glued together. And then this layout is all from that panel, and then this is where the second joystick was from the other panel, and I modified it to fit a spinner. So yeah, anyway, talking about stuff I didn't mean to talk about in this video. The main point of this video was the monitors, to show again more Double Dragon information. This is the Double Dragon monitor frame, which is a unique piece. I think unique. I don't know if any other cabs use that same setup, but this is the only time I've seen it before. So little how-to on if you need to swap a tube or a different monitor in, what you're going to deal with. Hopefully The tube is just simple 4 bolts out to get the old one out, 4 bolts in to get the new one in. Hopefully it'll all line up and be square and everything. But your work is going to be monitoring the plate there that holds the frame. And because it is just held in place with screws from the side, I guess you could even use wood if you wanted to, if you didn't want to use metal. Although the metal does help ground it. The 2 bolts that hold the chassis down that go through, I think there's a, well, you know what? I don't even know if those would ground, because I think those plastic spacers go all the way through. So it might not be getting its grounding through there. Huh. Interesting. I thought it did. But on closer inspection, no. Nope. If you screw your bolts into there to secure the chassis, I think you're just screwing into plastic. You're not actually screwing into the frame. Okay. Hey, that's interesting to know. So another note. It appears that making your chassis grounded to the frame might not work if you're just expecting those bolts to do it for you. Okay, well, I'm going to cut this video off, and whether this should be called the Double Dragon video series anymore, I don't know. This might be the last video in that series, and then just anything else that I have related to this cabinet will just be, this is a multi-JAMA cabinet based on a Double Dragon cab. But, yeah, anxious to get this going and actually play some games on this for the first time.